Going live, going live, going live. Boom! It says that I'm live. I must be live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. Good to see you. My name's Call Simon. It is April 19th, and there's not a lot of news to talk about this week other than the obvious news that it's been like every night this week. It's the latest for COVID-19 and what's going on associated with that in Japan. Again, sorry for the last minute tweet, although I'm relatively on time, so that's pretty good. Big shout out to Radri, who actually just posted an edit of the interview he did with me on Twitch the other night. Hey Andrea, good to see you. The other night, so you can see that. It's a good discussion. He had some technical problems. It's of course not easy. Of course, daylight saving now done with in Melbourne, so now we are only 1 hour apart, like I'm used to with Queensland, so that's good. It makes it a little bit easier for you to watch, which means, yes, well, except for the substance, of course, but yeah, good to have you in the comments there. So yeah, there's not actually a lot of topics tonight, per se. It's the regular sort of new stuff. I can tell you how things are going here, definitely, and I will also be, I'm hoping to actually, I've been practicing making some tunes. I guess a lot of people have been doing stuff like that lately, so I'll be able to share that and show that. In the perhaps at the end of the show. Hey, the J-Vlog, good to see you. If you're in the comments, please say hello. I see there's 6 people watching. Always nice to see who's there, but otherwise we can get into the topics. And yeah, I don't have a lot tonight actually, so it might be short, but we will see how that goes. I wonder if that is the, oh, it is too. That's the, you can see a little bit of the camera here at the top. I guess I could adjust that, but then I start getting into the risk of what happens when I start making adjustments during the show. It's never a good idea, but let's just pull that up there. I guess it's got the time and my battery if I do that, or I could just push that up and do that. Yeah, do it that way. So yes, anyway, good to see who else we got here. We got Runaway Incursion. Good to see, I don't recognize the handle name, but good to see Runaway Incursion. And yes, good to have you all here in the chat. I guess I'm just going to jump into it. And remember, as always, if you would like to, if you'd like me to talk about anything, or you've got a question for me, or something you'd like me to comment on, just add my Call Simon in the comments. It will flash orange where I'm looking. It looks like I'm looking at the comments, but I'm actually looking over here. Butter inventory is doing just fine. Some other areas of worry, which I will be covering tonight, but butter inventory, just that much, is doing okay. But yeah, all good here. So I'm going to jump into it. Tokyo 503, hello indeed, good to have you join. You got here just in time. We're just about to kick off with the topics. It has been a quiet week, although that's kind of what you'd expect. I must admit, what's really noticeably happened, Kang and Kodos, good to see. Question, if you work for a company back in Australia, digital nomads, so I'll pay your taxes there and have to do all your tax, and pay my taxes there, and or do I have to do my tax return there? Oh, hit the like me. I don't know. I'm not a tax guy. I really don't know. I guess if you are earning income in Australia, if it's getting paid in Australia, that's a good question. If you're performing, if you're in Japan and you're doing the work in Japan and you're getting paid to your bank account in Japan, you could argue that the work is subject to Japan taxes, but not Australia taxes. But there again, if there's an Australian connection, who knows? Yes, the standard answer that I give to that is you should go talk to an expert on that. Particularly in Australia, if they've got withholding tax, that makes it easier. If it's getting paid cash, I don't know how you'd figure that out. Actually, you probably, whoever you go to for your normal advice on that stuff, I'm afraid. But yes. Anyway, like I said, there's not a lot of news anymore. I guess a lot of news is locked down. There's just not a lot of things going on at the moment. I saw BBC was covering the Lady Gaga playing music at home. You know, I'm sure, why not make that the top story in the world? I'd like to think that there's probably more important things, but you know what, the more important things are kind of the same every day, so so there you go. Yeah, good advice to Andrea Moboy on seeing an accountant. The problem is as well, a lot of countries, I think Japan and Australia have a tax treaty, but yeah, you can get caught out sometimes where you have to pay in both countries, and that can suck as well. And this is what also helps Oh no, now I'm going into legal advice mode, which I shouldn't do. Hey, Steve Miller, great to see you. Welcome. Um, yeah, it's always good to have a contract that's making clear that you're doing the work in Australia or doing the work in Japan, so that you partly for that reason to. But yes, indeed. Hey, Steve. So Steve Miller is with us. That is, I guess it's early morning in the US, but very, very good to have you with us. And hope that you are doing okay there, as we all are. So yeah, I'm gonna jump into the topics now, unless there's anyone else who hasn't said hello yet in the comments. It's good to see Runaway Incursion. Um, I don't recognize the handle name, but always good to see new people. So yes, indeed, and everybody say hello to Steve Miller. He does awesome vlogs. Although now he does the real thing. He graduated. He got hired by the, well, I was going to say by the private sector, but it's really the public sector. Last that I heard. So yes, indeed. So yeah, first topic. McDonald's announced that in Tokyo and the 13 prefectures under emergency declaration across 1,900 restaurants, McDonald's are only going to be doing takeaways from now on. It's true. I was actually going past the other day and I noticed that it was open and there were people inside. There's a Mossburger where I am as well, and that still has people inside. And I must admit, it feels a little bit weird going into family restaurants. I'm a big fan of Caesarea, but it's pretty cramped. And it's got a pretty high turnover of people, and it doesn't quite feel. I must admit, I have very much an on-off relationship with McDonald's. It's like Coke, you know. When you're drinking it regularly, and when you're not, you're not. Every time I've had a negative experience with McDonald's, like with the food quality, like not cooked or something not good, and I won't go into the details because it just happened to me, and it could have happened anywhere, I guess. But I've gone off McDonald's for about a year. But that's it. If you're a Macca's person, you can still get takeaways. They still do deliveries, and you can still do that. But you can't go and eat in the restaurants from, I believe, Monday. So yeah, Peter Alexander, indeed, enjoy the house arrest. Yeah, the J vlog, that $1,000 payout per citizen seems very deceptive. Wife and I got into an argument because it isn't finalized. Well, please don't be getting into an argument. That is one of the subjects for tonight. And hopefully I can shed some light on that based on what the latest government proclamation is from the NHK. A lot of people got their knickers in a twist, figuratively and probably literally, over that matter, because they used the word kokumin, which means it means citizen, but it's a weird term, Yes, I'll get to that, and hopefully I will help. I will help there be peace in their household. I'm sorry to hear that you got into an argument about that. Also, Kangan Kodos, Sky New back in Australia stated that hospitals here in Japan are not able to cope and are sending normally ill away. Is that true? Well, I can touch on that again tonight as well. Carlos Diamante, good to see you. Welcome everybody. Really appreciate it, by the way, when you say hello. It is nice to see who's in the comments. Remember, as always, if you like what's in the substance of the show, please like if you like. Yes, indeed. Already some stuff there. The hospitals in Japan are not able to cope as kind of... well, I covered this myself this week, and it's in the topics, the stories about hospitals turning people away, and that is indeed happening, although it happens a lot with ambulances. It happens normally, but it's happening worse than usual at the moment. There's various things that are happening to try to cope and avoid a collapse of the medical system here, but indeed, I think the stories that are going around recently about, and these started with NHK, with the national public broadcaster, about problems in Tokyo, I don't think they reflect a state like New York, where doctors are collapsing and running out of equipment and hospitals being overrun with patients. It's not like that. They're just not... It's just hospitals are not really prepared for the numbers to increase much more. This is the thing. So we're not quite in a state of collapse, but certainly in anticipation of the need to prepare for for an increase in serious cases. There is a lot happening right now in terms of taking over hotels. This is already happening, so free of charge now. Patients that are not suffering such serious symptoms but need to be isolated are being put into hotels, which are now being run by hospitals and the government. So there are things that they're doing to try to maintain the capacity of hospitals, but the thing with hospitals is if you're in an ambulance, they can decide whether to accept you or not. If you just show up or you go in a taxi, my understanding is that they have to accept you. I don't know about that for sure, but if you're in a taxi, they'll check in advance where they can take you. And right now, all the hospitals are either, dealing with everything they want to deal with. or they're not prepared to handle emergency cases requiring respirators and isolation and so on that COVID-19 patients have. And the result is that these people are often getting sent all the way out into the suburbs, quite a long way. We'll get to that later. But first story tonight, anyway, McDonald's is turning people away. So McDonald's isn't turning people away; they're doing takeaways. Indeed, probably what hospitals should be doing. Just today, yesterday we had the highest number of per day cases in Tokyo. We had 201 cases yesterday. Today 107. Of course, the thing yesterday was it was practically like a winter typhoon in Tokyo, so there probably weren't many people going out, although it does take a couple of days for the test results, so it might not be that. But it's funny, the white balance on the camera here is kind of flickering and adjusting on the fly. It makes it a little bit weird. Sorry about that. But yeah, so, at the same time, you'll notice the numbers per day here have been increasing a bit, but they're still basically as bad as they were before. They're not getting worse. We were talking a couple of weeks ago that Tokyo may be about to flip into a New York situation where it goes from like 20 to 100 to 500 to 1,000 to 15,000 per day. We are definitely not in that situation yet. We could be in that situation. The problem remains that most of the cases that are coming up are not from a known traceable point of origin. So the way that they got the cases in Hokkaido and South Korea and so on under control so well relatively is that there was a lot of contact tracing. They were able to identify the clusters and the sources where people were picking it up and find and isolate all the people that were involved. And this is how they got the numbers down. But what's happening in Tokyo is, although the numbers are not crazy, the people who are getting it don't know where they're getting it from. And so you're getting kind of up and down, but still fairly steady. It's not exploding the way that it could be, but at the same time, it could explode any time because there's any number of people at the moment. Every day there's dozens of people who get it, and any one of those people could be causing a cluster. So it certainly isn't a situation to be relieved that the number is flat at the moment, that it's not escalating up in the way. Another thing to bear in mind is that the number of cases has gone up double in the last 9 days. So that's also it's not a good thing. It is going up, but yeah, it is what it is. I see more people coming into the comments. Sergeant Bilko, good to see you. The J-Vlog emailed the mother. Opinion A, there was a spike because the government was lax. Opinion B, they didn't test lack testing not to cause fear before the Olympics. Well, that's another big topic. Quinn Rankin, we can get into that. Andrew Mulboy, at least we're dealing with the cruise ships now. People suing Carnival Cruises for negligence. Well, that's the thing with Australia. It's funny, for all the drama we had in Japan, I don't think anyone is actually suing the same cruise line. It was another princess that was here in Tokyo. I think they should just call them all the Corona princesses now. It sounds correct. It's got a nice ring to it if it weren't for the association with the disease. And but yes, certainly lots of stuff happening around Australia as well, aside from the fact they weren't letting any of the cruise ships dock for a time. So the situation in Tokyo is it's not good. It is bad news every day. South Korea, by contrast, got its numbers yesterday down to single digits for the first time. And Taiwan, ever since March 9, has had no new cases in Taiwan. Now remember, Taiwan is sandwiched between China, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea. They should be overrun with this, and and they've got a lot of human contacts with all of those places in normal circumstances, and they've been on 0 cases for like more than a month now. So clearly South Korea and Taiwan, who have addressed this thing very, very aggressively, lots of testing. They've got great disease control agencies and mechanisms in place, which Japan really didn't have anything like at all. Those countries have done very well, and this is where we should really be learning everything we can from how they managed it. But in Japan, it is bad. It is bad. And the thing is as well, the way that this is, you can't really see it finishing. This is the thing. The government is still not doing general testing to try to find all the people that have it. They're still being reactive, trying to find the cases that are serious enough that get through all the hoops that they put up to getting a PCR test, to getting found positive. And the result is there's clearly a lot of asymptomatic people out there in Japan. And right now the government is just this week, they've just announced a few days ago that they are going to increase testing. So we'll get to this. This is part of what the J-Vlog was mentioning. the policy on testing until now, due to the lack of tests available in Japan, as well as the lack of capacity in the public agencies that handle testing, is that they were looking to stop those agencies from being overwhelmed by limiting tests to people that basically met like 4 criteria and that were being referred, often by doctors and whatnot, as being eligible for the test. So a lot of people, there's lots of stories around the internet of people who have symptoms very much like COVID-19, but were not being tested. And this is, on the one hand, you could say that that's fixing the numbers. On the other hand, you could say, well, the approach is consistent. You know, the baseline that they're using now, they didn't increase the tests. You can see the test numbers on the Tokyo government and every prefectural site. They didn't increase the number of tests at all after the Olympic announcement. It had nothing to do with that. But what they've done is, you know, they've kept this number all along, which produces the number that we see, which is probably lower than the actual number, but the number is done with the same philosophy and it's done with the same methodology that it's been done ever since January. So the trends and so on are probably representative, including the fact that it's not increasing dramatically, but the point is because they're not trying to find all the cases out there and try to sort of stamp it out. At this rate, this could go on for years. So clearly the government has sort of started to realize this, and they've actually, now they've obtained the means to obtain more tests, and they say that they are going to increase testing, and I think they are going to shift more towards what we've seen in Korea and Taiwan, where they've tried more broad testing in order to actually combat the disease. I think what Japan's been doing is something that a lot of European countries have been doing, which is that there's been a willingness to let it go through the population. And the main interest is in treating to maximize survivability of people who get it. You know, basically to slow the spread as much as possible, to allow the medical system to sort of cope and to just let it go through the population rather than trying to stop it. However, given that there are successful cases, including within Japan and Hokkaido, places that have been able to stop it, hopefully we're seeing a bit of a switch to more proactive testing. But again, there's 120 million people in this country, and there is a shortage of tests and testing institutions. So we'll have to see how that changes. But in terms of the idea that the government was doing what it was doing because of the Olympics, or that it was withholding tests, or that it was withholding test results, it is ridiculous. That's you know, if that were the case, they would have increased testing after, you know, as soon as they cancelled the Olympics, the number of cases would have skyrocketed, and the number of tests would have increased, which they haven't. The results and everything are basically being done on the same metrics, and they're getting similar results. There was a news article the other day which showed the number of cases by each prefecture, the number of tests, and the percentage rate of detections of the disease. In most places, the number of tests for every 100 tests, there's only like 1 or less than 1. It's less than 1% or 1% of cases overall that are actually showing up positive for COVID-19 when tested. However, in Tokyo, this number has gone from like 5% to 10% to lately the number has been nearly 50%, which again shows that in Tokyo they're clearly applying an aggressive not testing strategy, which means that people really genuinely pretty much already totally have it when they come, at least compared to everywhere else. But again, the really low hit rates on the PCR tests everywhere outside of Tokyo shows again that the government isn't really, it's not like they are, you know, it is a very small percentage of cases that get confirmed out of against the number of tests that are done each day. So there you go. Italy is terrible. I see more comments, Andrew Morboy. Indeed, Italy does sound, I mean, a lot of places are struggling. The thing with China, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with China this week, and I'm not going to go too far into it, but, you know, it is totally credible that they're increasing the toll now because they're finding the people who died outside of hospitals. This is happening in America, what they're finding in the elderly homes. This is happening in the UK. It's definitely happening in Italy, and it's probably going to happen, well, but it's kind of funny. Japan is not that out of control that it's not able to count this sort of thing at the moment. But you know, certainly places that are dealing with tens of thousands of cases, hundreds of thousands of cases. Yeah, it's a pretty dark time like that. King and Kodos, is that not just the limit of the tests that are possible, i.e. 4,000 per day is the max? That is the max of the capacity of the institutions that are doing the tests. So that is that even though they have 4,000 test units per day, they can only actually perform nationwide, I believe, something less than that actually, but they're doing things, they're hooking up with private hospitals and institutions to increase that capacity. I mean, the government, this is the thing that frustrates me the most actually. Partly because of the way that the cruise liner thing was handled and a bunch of other things where the Ministry of Health was got a lot of bad press, the government decided to shift the ministry in charge of responding to the pandemic from the Ministry of Health, which makes sense because it's a health issue, to the Ministry of Economic Revitalization. And as a result, when you'd really hope in a pandemic that the news was really focusing on the actions that the government was taking to, test more, provide treatment, prepare hospitals and so on, the only story that's been in the news and the politics that's been debated is how much money to give to people. And bear in mind, politically, most of the country is still 13 prefectures are under a state of emergency, and really only Tokyo, to a lesser degree Osaka, Kobe, Kanagawa, have really high numbers every day, like in the dozens. But most of the rest of the country, recent days Hokkaido, Fukuoka had a couple of clusters, they had a bit of a spike, but most of the rest of the country is only dealing with, in the entire prefectures, only a few cases. So politically, it's great to talk about giving everybody $1,000, but in the end of the day, if you're in Tokyo, there are more. Honestly, there are more, and that's important. There are a lot of people also facing economic hardship, but it's not the most important thing to deal with right now. I feel less assured seeing that the government's totally focused on giving cash out to people, than knowing that there's going to be medical care. Mr. Korichev, you don't get $1,000. Well, come to Japan for 3 months and maybe you will. But yes, indeed. Oh, you're going to sleep, are you? Good night, Andrea Morboy. Good night. Have a good night, everyone. Andrea. But yeah, so South Korea, I was just mentioning, they've had a wonderfully successful, and Korea's like 40 million people, I think. They're about a third the size of Japan. They, of course, were prepared after the SARS epidemic. They really armed up. Interesting hearing the comments of the Foreign Ministry of South Korea as well, that the Foreign Minister saying that it was also the Seawall ferry sinking disaster as well, which gave them a real lesson in crisis management and how mismanaging a crisis can bring down a government like it really did with the Conservative government that came before the current government. So going all out on the response clearly paid dividends. They won having the election in the middle of this seems a bit wrong-headed to me. But they did it and they won, and I guess that's deserved for the way that they apparently have competently handled this. It's a shame as someone who wants better Korea and Japan relations, because the left-wing parties in Japan unfortunately routinely bash on Japan for votes, so it means there's going to be bad relations for the next couple of years. It's a weird thing over there that the left-wing parties are more ethnic nationalist than the right-wing parties, but it's complicated. I've talked about it here on the show before, but there again, I mean, based on what's most important to Korean voters right now, they're not thinking about Japan right now. I hope they're not thinking about Japan right now, because that would make it pretty disturbing the way the election landslide happened. But clearly, no, it's a deserved win based on governing the country of Korea really well. And again, all the more reason I would love Japan and Korea to sort of cooperate more, and for Japan to learn some positive lessons from what's going on over there. One of the things that is happening in Japan at the moment is, there's been a lot of stories like this summarizing the whole thing around seals. I actually have to do this as part of my job because I work in legal. It's something we try to minimize. In Japan, it is perfectly legal and perfectly valid to use a digital signature, even to use a digital seal, even an image of a seal, if it's properly approved, if it represents the valid assent of the company, of the representative of the company to an agreement, you can use it. But it's not just contracts that you use seals for. People put it on documents just to say that work is done, just to indicate that something is approved. There's a lot of paperwork processes that companies won't process invoices unless there's a seal confirming that it was verified by somebody in the company sending it. You won't be able to file for an expense unless your supervisor puts their seal on indicating that they've reviewed it and they approve it. A lot of processes that clearly should be digitized and replaced, but have always just been done in person in Japan using these seals, are still there, and it means that you have the ridiculous situation that a lot of people who are in jobs, remembering most jobs cannot be done remotely, but there are a lot of people in jobs that can and are being done remotely who still go into offices to get a physical ink stamp on their documents when it's not necessary. The real joke about this was, I've got it somewhere in here, The minister for IT in Japan, this guy, the Minister for IT is also the president of the what is it? The Diet Members Association for the Protection of Japanese Hanko Culture. Is the IT Minister of Japan. I mean, you know, you'd say only Japan, but then you remember that there's a coal baron in charge of the Environment Agency in the US. So, you know, it's clearly not just in Japan that we have this sort of thing, but it happens in Japan. And he's, to the widespread discussion in the newspapers and the media that, you know, we have to get rid of hankos, you know, because it's actually really inhibiting things and it's an outdated sort of a custom. He basically in a very NRA funded politician type way. I mean, you know, we don't really have guns here, so we might as well have hankos. He's come out and said, you know, we fully agree with the need to revisit the having hankos at the center of life in Japan, but we really think that this should be led by the private sector and not the government. You know, we're not going to do anything, but good luck with that kind of a thing. Yes, that is ridiculous, but that is a thing that happened. I don't know, what are people doing at the moment with like elevators and stuff like that? I am using my house keys. I'm sort of putting the pointy bit on, so I figure that's pretty much minimum sort of exposure. I can't really feel too bad about scratching. It's actually not. I've been checking the buttons, but they're not very scratched up, but I'm doing that at the moment. Kangen Kodos took a small cut from your seal. So that's not 100 yen shop easy copy, too easy to fake. So I made sure it was different by making a small cut to one of the characters. Oh, very clever. It is true that the bank will often check and they will match as part of our paperwork. Again, like matching signatures. The thing is nowadays, I mean, signatures never were that secure in the first place, and seals, as you say, I mean, less so, especially if you're like Tanaka-san. You can buy one, like you say, from a 100 yen shop. Or being a foreigner in and of itself is one form of security, but the whole thing is still, even, and this is not a Japan problem either, as you point out. You know, right now two-factor authentication, you know, beats anything actually at the moment, especially now that there are biometric. A lot of controversy about use of facial scans and so on phones and stuff like that, but the data is kept locally, and there's more points, unique points, that you can take from a face scan than from a fingerprint. But you can use both, and if you do that in addition to a password, in fact, a lot of places are not even requiring passwords anymore either, because they are less secure than a biometric scan. So yeah, we should be going digital, and we should be going biometric and multi-factor, but what can you do? Iraq 299 Hanko Shmanko, I quite like that, although it sounds a little bit naughty, but I'll let you get away with that because it rhymes. With so many Satos and Kobayashis in the country, well, exactly. Yes, and honestly, well, it's like a signature. Who looks at it anyway most of the time? So yes. Anyway, I like this idea, by the way. So the one person basically put a whole bunch of toothpicks in a sponge beside and put for pressing elevator buttons, and there's a little cup there that you can return the toothpicks into. It looks like a big brush. I thought this was quite alarming at first. I didn't get it, but when I saw this was someone, a very thoughtful landlord, who put this so that people can press elevator buttons without having to press their fingers. It's quite considerate, very, very germophobic Japan. I quite like that one. Iraq is a kato, so it's too easy. Well, yes, well, but remember, kato can be written like a million different ways, although it is an extremely common name. But yeah, obviously, that's a little bit silly. Just thought this was interesting. Some businesses saw spikes in spending, some did not. So in terms of what is seeing less spending, cruises, funny that, airlines. I just actually had to, I did actually today, or yesterday, I cancelled my Qantas flight for July to Australia, which I was very much looking forward to, but clearly that's not going to happen. So Qantas has, what they're offering right now is that if you can, for all flights before the end of July, which I qualified for, if you cancel them, you get to keep a credit until the end of next year, and I am planning to go back to Australia, and it will be on Qantas, so I didn't mind that. I don't need the cash back right away. So yeah, I cancelled my Qantas ticket, and hopefully, well, I'm definitely going to make a trip to Australia before the end of next year, unless this thing continues for that long. So that's happening. Hotels, cruises, airlines, not doing so well at the moment. Well, more can you? Cruises I never understood in the first place. I think a lot of airlines are going to be a lot of risk of going out of business, but we'll see. Fitness, obviously a lot of gyms closing. That one I don't really understand quite so much. I love my gym. I love my that I can go to kickboxing with some fantastic former Thai pro, champion trainers. It's a lot of fun, and I have absolutely no problem continuing to pay the monthly fee for that, no matter how long this goes on, so that those guys are there when this is all over. So I don't know. It's kind of a shame if people are canceling their gym subscriptions. I guess you know what? If I was at a big chain like Konami Sports, and I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go to Konami Sports for 6 months, I would cancel it. But I've got kind of a friendly local gym with the people who run it that I really like, so I definitely want to support them, so I'm doing that. Apparel, that's an interesting one. I guess people's home clothes are going to get worn out pretty soon, and you can shop for clothes online, so I'm a little bit baffled by that. Fast food doing less well also, but well, that's kind of funny as well. I know a lot of people are eating at home. I guess this is in the US. In Japan, there's a lot of people eating fast food. In fact, we have some new people joining my team at work, so we're going to be doing, we've sort of tried to figure out how to do a welcome lunch, and we're probably going to do pizzas for that, which you can do. Maybe that's not a smart idea from a gym perspective, but sometimes you got to have that. Places that are doing better, warehouse clubs. I'm not sure what a warehouse club is. I think that's like a Costco. Supermarkets are doing well, for obviously everywhere. Everybody's going to a supermarket instead of eating out so much. General merchandise and e-commerce. E-commerce is doing well. I guess people are shopping at home. Home improvement. Interesting that that's doing well in Tokyo. They were talking about shutting down all the home, all the home centers in Tokyo, but those are obviously doing well. Alcohol is going up, which I guess people are doing. That's actually not a good sign if they're selling more and it's at home. Food delivery. So fast food is down, but food delivery is up. Gaming is doing well, and online grocers are doing very well. So I think this is for US, but it is interesting. It is probably pretty indicative. I made a couple of tracks this week. I made my first track for ages, and I used the Akai and GarageBand, which I'm learning how to use. Very simple track, deliberately simple track. But it came out quite nice, and given that I'm learning this, I think I'll be able to do some stuff I wasn't able to do before, so I'm quite looking forward to that. More to come on that. Police are right now, although there is no binding force, lockdown, which police can force people to go indoors or go home. Police with batons are walking around Kabukicho telling people to go home, which people who work in Kabukicho are claiming that it sort of is police intimidation. And they don't like it. It's very police state-ish that they're walking around with batons out, but of course they don't actually have any authority to do anything, but that is interesting that is happening. Better Call Saul. Are you guys watching Better Call Saul? There's one more episode. This week is the finale. But damn, there was 4 seasons in, and the episodes are, I was dumbstruck by how good the latest Better Call Saul was. I was sitting... I spent like an hour. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. I started rewatching the episode after reading a whole lot of Twitter commentary about it. It is so good. Highly recommend it. Anyway, it's 4 seasons is a long way in to catch up if you haven't been watching it. But I think it's one of the best written shows. And what's great about it, this is the thing where so much TV and movies get so focused on trying to be central around one character. The idea of ensemble casts. Really, really deep, interesting characters throughout. Making everyone interesting is kind of rare. But that was the whole idea. With Breaking Bad, the magic was that you had this great central character, but you had quite deep, other characters as well. And that's probably why it made so much sense to do this break-off series, where, Saul is, I guess, the center point of the story. But, man, the other characters now are stealing the whole thing. And it's just, the whole thing is just so good. The writing is good. The storytelling is amazing. I just love it so much. It was just really, really awesome this week. If you're watching... Say in the comments if you're watching Better Call Saul. To me, it's just like, I finished watching Ozark. Ozark is also very good. I highly recommend it if you've got Netflix. But Better Call Saul to me is just like, wow. I can't think of even things which I really loved. I really loved Lost, but like by the 3rd season, the wheels had come off. Battlestar Galactica, I loved, but by the 3rd season, the wheels had come off. So many things that I like, they just don't hold out like for 3, 4, 5 seasons. But 4th season of Better Call Saul, and it's just really, really, really good. Milkman too. You don't have to watch Breaking Bad. It's better if you've watched it, but Breaking Bad as well is long. It's like, what is it, 5 seasons? And I remember I binge watched the whole thing, and it nearly made me sick. I watched it over like 2 weeks. But yeah, Aaron, if you've seen Breaking Bad is within Breaking Bad, the story about a guy who becomes a school teacher who becomes a big time meth dealer. Somewhere in about the 2nd or 3rd season of Better Call Saul, he becomes connected with basically like a mob lawyer, like a sort of TV commercial dodgy lawyer called Better Call Saul, who's got these sort of who basically looks after drug dealers whenever they get in trouble. And he becomes, an interesting, colourful, but small character in Breaking Bad. And when the whole thing finished and they announced that they were going to make a series around that character, it was a little bit like around that character. Like he wasn't even he was like a 3rd layer character. He didn't have much depth in Breaking Bad. But so it just basically, what you have is it's a prequel to Breaking Bad, where you know what's going to happen in a way. You know who all the characters are. It's set in the lead up to the connection with the Breaking Bad timeline. So at that point, this person is now completely like a dodgy, TV commercial sort of caricature bad lawyer who's very clever and gets away with things and looks after gangsters. But when it starts off with Better Call Saul, he's basically kind of a struggling good lawyer in a law firm, and having various sort of challenges, and it's taking you through what ultimately is kind of going to be a tragedy. You're looking for him to turn into this character that he becomes in Breaking Bad, but he's nothing like that in the beginning of this. And it's more or less, again, it's just a very well structured, very well scripted story of his downfall. And the great thing is it takes all the other characters from Breaking Bad, particularly like the gang world people and the sort of private investigator, and it shows all of their timelines slowly merging together. And the thing is that you're watching it, and while you're rooting for the character, he's going to become a bad guy, and that the world around him is going to need to fall apart quite a lot for it to and you can feel it getting closer and closer to the Breaking Bad timeline. So you're watching this ultimately. So he's a criminal lawyer, but he becomes kind of a criminal himself. But you're watching this. Essentially, it's a tragedy. You're watching this thing that is a decline of a person who at times is struggling to be good, but just when he's about to be good, he just sort of falls down a lot. He's a very, very flawed main character. But it's just lifted so much by the huge focus, equal focus almost, on his love interest, who's just amazing. The other cartel characters. And the thing is, a lot of these characters are not in Breaking Bad, and there's no indication as to why they're not there, but it's close, so a lot of bad things are about to happen. It's to me, it's just amazing. It's very, very well written. And yes, indeed, Tokyo 503 is a criminal lawyer. Although he's kind of on the precipice right now. He's been a con man in the past who cleaned up and became a lawyer, but he's slipping back. It's just so good. Taiwan, no new cases since March. Not only that, but they also actually discovered the Wuhan coronavirus and reported it to the WHO back in December. And the WHO ignored it because it was from Taiwan and they didn't want to upset China. I guess that's another thing. There's all this drama at the moment with the US now cutting the funding of the WHO. I'm not happy with the way politically the WHO has clearly sort of been kind of appeasing China and whatnot, but at the same time, cutting the funding, of the WHO when so much of the world relies upon the WHO for information. And best, for scientific data, there needs to be a cross-border, a global organization for health data. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, we should just get rid of it, like from America. If America wants to be isolationist, it would be very damaging. I don't like that, but if they want to, that's their choice. But, they play an important role, so it's kind of disappointing. But at the same time, I do find it infuriating when any international body, especially one dedicated to global health, isolates a country. And Taiwan, again, it's been standout, just like Korea, on how to handle this thing. A lot of social distancing. I think there was some topics in New York where apparently some people holding skis as an indication of how to social distancing was taken as being anti-Latino. well, look at me. I mean, I thought everybody skied, so I guess they should have used a canoe instead. I don't know. Yes, obviously, I didn't really think about ethnic or ethnocentric distancing metaphors, but apparently skis were considered it, and it got widely mocked. But that inspired a whole bunch of people thinking about, so what would be a Japanese metaphor for social distancing that people would understand? Well, a tuna. That would work. People understand a tuna. Actually, I like tatami. Everyone knows what a tatami looks like. And if you're standing in line, and this is not happening right now, proper social distancing, there should be a tatami mat between you and anybody else. Everyone knows what that is. They measure apartments and buildings and floor space by it. So that's pretty good. Some more ones. Beetles. Reasonable indicator, I guess, if you're a more elderly Japanese. A bicycle. Well, that's a pretty good one. Especially if you're Dutch, I think that's a good one. But yes, I think actually the tatami mat and the tuna are pretty good indicators there. Yes, the WHO told Trump to stop politicizing the outbreak. Well, yes, indeed. And you know what? I think I've heard rumors about this that what the US is going to demand is Ted Ross's resignation to restart the funding. And you know what? I would kind of be okay with that. I don't think they should be attacking or damaging the entire institution because it performs such an important role. But certainly the idea that the leadership is astray. Yeah. And you know what? If that would resolve it, and if they could confirm from the US that would stop the shenanigans, then Ted Ross should resign. And to me, that should have come in the first place. America pays more than 10 times more than China, so I don't know why they have to ignore Taiwan, for example. So, yeah. This is more on Taiwan, just doing very, very well. That's great. In Shinjuku, because they lost the Keio Hospital, the biggest hospital in Shinjuku Ward, and the testing structure there has been difficult, and so many hospitals have been turning people away. The Shinjuku Ward government has actually started, they've actually kind of quasi-nationalized the hospitals, and they've said, this hospital is going to be for testing and sorting patients. This is going to be for serious patients. This is going to be for light patients. So they're actually, and these hotels are going to be for people who require observation. So Shinjuku is one of the highest counts within Tokyo of cases, and basically because the hospitals there are now not really coping anymore, and particularly because there have been in-hospital clusters now, one in Keio Hospital and in Nakano Prefecture, Nakano Ward as well. There's also been something similar. So yeah, they've kind of stepped in, and this is exactly, if you ask me, what the national government and or the Tokyo government should be doing. Shinjuku Ward really leading the way on actually setting up a framework to make sure that everyone who needs to get tested and checked and treated within Shinjuku Ward can get that. So yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, on the one hand, no one likes to see, Trump is Trump scapegoating the WHO. Would he have been happy if they had just praised him the same way that they praised China? Probably yes and yes. But at the same time, they did some dumb things and they politicized health. I mean, they did. They particularly, like I say, over Taiwan and on other things as well. Yeah, and it was the leader, but again, the institution is far more important than the person in charge of it, but clearly the person in charge. From what I understand, he's from Ethiopia, and like most African countries, China gives those governments a ton of development aid. It's not that they give the WHO a lot of money, they give a lot of African countries money, and they use the clout that having all of those African countries supporting China in international institutions. They use that weight to get their own people sort of appointed, and it's sort of is understood. It's the benefit that he's getting it's not a personal bribe, and it's not due to Chinese direct control of the WHO. These are benefits for Ethiopia and East African countries that China is paying through aid. That he is clearly being put in there with with the support and an agenda to keep China happy for Ethiopia, and that's kind of happened. And honestly, the meaningless, pointless, doesn't really matter messaging most of the time. So he praised China's response, even though they were late. I was a little bit annoyed that he attacked countries, and this is what America is pissed off about. That he criticized Japan when Japan started restricting travel from China, saying it was unnecessary and harmful to China's economy. Again, that was a little bit appeasing. Between that and Taiwan, but that was not necessary. But at the same time, taking it out on the whole WHO is not appropriate. Yeah, well, and Quinn Rackard, I know the U.S. president is saying responded in deaths, but listen, the WHO saying, hey, don't cut travel with China, didn't persuade Japan to change its mind, or America. They're an advisory organization, so like I say, they don't have control. They don't actually tell governments what to do. They only advise, and while they criticize a bunch of governments that decided to put travel restrictions on China, including South Korea, Japan, United States, European countries, none of those countries reversed their positions based on what the WHO said. They were there to advise. Now, sure, maybe some small countries that don't have the ability to make their own sort of scientific and health decisions. Maybe Costa Rica decided to follow the advice and leave travel to China open, and maybe it resulted from there. And certainly, if America and Japan had followed Tedros's advice over travel restrictions, then certainly it would have resulted in more deaths. Clearly, that's clear. But in the end of the day, the idea that they are somehow as powerful or that they have any direct control over what countries do is wrong. Clearly, it was just a meaningless statement to appease China, but it didn't have that. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I do agree that he should quit. He should quit, take the fall, and frankly, and let it be a lesson to other people in future that you can't suck up too much to anyone, to America or to China or to any other superpower trying to control these things. BTC Chiba, good to have you in the chat. Thank you. Like the big boom. Matagaijinko made a great track on SoundCloud called Solitude, ambient sort of trancey track, and I took that and I made a remix of it, the Hiko mix, which I put a bit of beat into it, and I really love the track, and she gave me all of the samples, all of the stems for it, and I added some of my own and took some of them out and pumped up the beat, and the original track is beautiful, it's complex, it's layered. I simplified it, I really didn't do very much to it, but it's a great track. So listen to both, listen to Matagaijinko's track from the Tokyo Digital crew, and then listen to my remix of it. The $930 virus stimulus payment. So yes, when it was originally announced by the Japanese government, they said it would be distributed to all kokumin, and a lot of gaijins freaked out right away at that, and they said, "Hey, kokumin, that's Japanese citizens. Why are you excluding permanent residents and foreigners and foreign residents?" And that wasn't really the intention. They say kokumin a lot. Min kind of just means the people, although it can mean ethnics, but that's not very rarely used in that sense in Japan. And of course, koku means of the country, so it can be translated as citizen, people of the country. But it really kind of means all the country folk, all the folk of the country or whatever. There's two problems with that. So yes, while everyone was saying the word kokumin rather than jumin, like people, residents. First thing is, the government really in Japan, the politicians have almost no control over policy or implementation. It's all done by the ministries, who never change. They all have lifetime tenure. All the bureaucrats, no matter who the government is, even when it changed from the LDP to the Democrats and back, the bureaucrats who do all of this thing are exactly the same. And the thing is, this $930 payment was done after the Lehman shock. 2009, they paid 1,000 yen to, $1,000 roughly, Juma yen, to all residents in Japan, and they did the same thing. They weren't very specific about making sure being explicitly inclusive of foreigners. We're 1% of the population. They're not really thinking about us. They said something similar back then, and the payment, when it was administered, they found it was easier just to give to all tax-paying residents. So they looked up the residence register and the taxpayer register, and they mailed it to everybody who files a tax return who's like a resident. This was the easiest way to administer the payment. And so when the LDP said this time, different party, in 2009 it was the Democrats, this time it was the LDP, when they said kokumin, a lot of people freaked out and said, oh, they're being racist. And honestly, the Japanese government is not technically competent enough to be that racist. This is the thing. It would actually be really difficult for the bureaucracy to filter out the citizens from the non-citizens. And the easiest way to pay out the $1,000 to everybody, the way that they announce that they're going to do, is to just do it the same way they did it last time, which is exactly what it turns out they're going to do. And this was actually clarified specifically by NHK, where they actually, here, after a few days of gaijins freaking out, I say gaijins, like my gaijins, we're all part of the tribe, literally kokuseki fumo. The scope of people entitled to the payments, they're not even going to ask citizenship to people. It's not even in the scope of questioning. The tax office does not track citizenship of who's paying tax. The residence office does not track the citizenship of the residents. Only the Ministry of Justice actually tracks which residents and which are foreign nationals. They only get tracked by the Ministry of Justice. You would have to actually get the whole list made up once, and then you'd have to cross-check a database of 125 million people with the Ministry of Justice immigration database, and those systems are not connected. To be racist would take so much time and cost and inefficiency. So yeah, if you have lived in Japan for more than 3 months and you have a residence registration, a juminhyo, and you have a my number, i.e. a social security number, which they started making mandatory for everyone to have last year, but a lot of people didn't get, but they're going to use this as a carrot to make everybody register for a social security number, which is what they're using to unify all the government systems for tracking people and collecting tax. If you do that, you're going to get your $1,000. You just have to be a resident. The original plan was that they were going to give 3,000 or sanjumayen to everybody who to families that were below a specific income threshold on a household basis who had suffered economic loss due to the current recession. That's hard to measure. Also, a lot of households, for example, have lots of kids, and they were doing it as a one payment for the whole household. If you're a house with like 3 people, it's the same payment as is being done by this. The income testing is very difficult to do and costly. Bureaucrats didn't like it. It excluded a lot of the population, and the coalition partner of the LDP, they said, hey, we think it should not be income tested, means tested, and we think it should just be like the same as last time. And eventually, Abe sort of said, well, we'll let Komeito do one thing every few years. And it's actually very popular. It turned out that, yes, again, the government's not competent enough to be as racist as people were assuming that they were. I'm going to get the payment. If you've lived here more than 3 months and you have a juminhyo or a my number, or registered my number, you'll be able to apply for it online. It'll be more convenient than before. So yes, the J-Vlog, wondering when I'm getting your 2 masks. They are distributing the masks in order of geographies, areas that basically have the most serious cases. So Tokyo, the first 13 prefectures are going to get them first. Within Tokyo, I'm assuming they're going to do it on a ward basis, and if you live in Setagaya, or you live in Suginami or Shinjuku, or any of those really hard-hit wards, Minato, Edogawa, any of those, you're probably going to get the mask before the people in Hachioji or other parts of Tokyo get them. But yeah, it depends on where you live. If you're in Tokyo, you are going to get them first. People are receiving them now. Some people are complaining that they're dirty or that they have like little bugs or something in them, which is a little bit disturbing. But they're coming around. They are kind of small, by the way. Like the Abe sort of small kind of over the mask thing. I was asking, what are these masks for ants? But they are what they are. You are going to get them. There will be 2 for every household, even though a lot of houses have more than 2 people, and some houses only have 1 person. So what can you do? You'll have to take turns and figure that out. But the money is coming, so don't worry about it. Don't fight. The kokumin thing is not a racist term. It's just a term that just means the folk, the Vulcan of the country. And it's actually not a racially exclusive term. Although the thing is, I'm sure if you actually asked a lot of LDP people, and they could actually control the administration of this, and they could actually decide if it goes to foreigners or not, I'm sure a lot of them would make the choice to not let foreigners have it. But in the end of the day, they don't have that much power, and the Japanese bureaucracy is not that capable. So yes, indeed. BJNI, welcome to the chat. Good to see you in there. Compared to China, Japan is extremely kind to foreigners. Well, I don't know about that, but Simon not China, but good to have you in the chat as well. I don't know about China, but Japan, yeah, Japan gets a bad rap. A lot of people, I don't know, it's like they want the government to be racist. It's like they're hoping that the government's racist. They want to be outraged. And I'm sure it was actually a deflating anticlimax that they couldn't be angry because they're getting their money. Certainly people were a lot quicker to be angry believing that they were victims than to say, wow, isn't this great, thank you for the cash, when they found out that they were getting it. Nobody said that at all. So, tough being government, eh? There is information hotlines being published on NHK if you and on all the local government hotlines as well. If you want information, if you believe that you also if you want information on treatment for COVID-19, or you think that you might have it and you live in Japan, there are hotlines being run by the government in 14 languages. Bearing in mind, English, although it's a lingua franca, it's a kind of common language. Certainly right now, Chinese, Vietnamese is about to take over China as the second biggest sort of group within Japan. Korean, Tagalog, Portuguese, Iranian, Persian. These are all languages spoken much more than English in Japan. But so the hotline 14 languages. That's good to see. That is my Hiko mix for Solitude. It is awesome. Go check it out. Number of cases doubled in 9 days, so that was a thing. I mentioned that before. This week, the government actually thought, well, everyone loves a festival, so they actually extended the state of emergency declaration to all of Japan, i.e. any prefecture can decide to start taking the same sort of lockdown, well, not really lockdown, quasi-lockdown measures that Tokyo's taking anytime that they like. Now anywhere in Japan, although most parts of Japan really don't have that many cases. Iwate Prefecture, north of Miyagi, up in the north of the country, they still have 0 cases. Although there's kind of a weird story about that. There was a 72-year-old guy who apparently would travel up there every year, and 72 years old, he wanted to settle down somewhere quiet, and he decided to move to a small town, to a little village in Iwate, apparently last month. And although the local city council asked him not to move right now because he was moving from Tokyo, he was normally living in Tokyo, and they didn't want people from Tokyo moving in there bringing the disease and everything up. But he moved in nonetheless, and a few days later he died in a fire, which sounds bad. I looked into people saying it looked and smelled a bit like us, and apparently the fire that he died in started in an adjacent apartment. 6 buildings burned down. But apparently this person, apart from the city council office refusing to register his change of address, he was also kind of surrounded by villagers who were trying to pressure him to go home, and then he died in a fire. And Iwate is still COVID-19 free. So some places in Japan are scary. I'll take my chances in Tokyo. What can I say? Social distancing in Japan. I have been dieting. I've been focusing on sleep, and that's been going pretty well. So it's nice to have those sort of things to do to keep occupied. BJ and I live in Funabashi. Indeed, there are cases out there. In fact, I think they had a cluster out there, didn't they? I mean, Chiba's got some numbers out there. That is the money that you're all getting. Again, the capacity of hospitals is being threatened by in-hospital infections. And this is just from today, actually, that finally Japan is now expanding testing. They're actually improving the framework. They've been building it up for a time, but I'd really like to see more attention and focus on this. Here is the story of it. That is the home of that 72-year-old man who moved from Tokyo to Iwate when the villagers didn't want him there. That is a bit scary. Don't mess with Iwate, I guess. And the most disturbing story of the night, that Japan's sheep meat import prices remain high. Unacceptable. The prices of lamb have gone up 3 times in the last 10 years. It's actually quite a disturbing graph. We're exactly up on an hour. I thought I was going to be finished 15 minutes earlier than this. It always takes exactly 1 hour. But you know what? I want to do I want to make a track. I've been learning how to get my workflow faster on this, so I'm going to do it. You're free to go, but I want to sort of show you how the old rig works now with the keyboard and with GarageBand. So let me bring this over here, this over here, this over here, this over here. Let me bring the live cam up here. Boom. So that is on. This I will I'll put here. Let's get that up close and on the right angle. And let's make a track. So I think I've got a good workflow up. So, hey Savas, good to have you here. Let's see if I can remember how to make one of these. So from scratch, I'm going to make live loops. And let's start with an instrument, and let's start with the drum. And let's make this one bar, boom, boom, boom. And let's make sure it's quantized and keep it simple on 118. And let's make the BPM, let's make it 125. The goal is let's go for some smooth sort of house type sound. Okay, and let's go for deep bass house. Okay, let me turn on the sound. Okay, so let's start. Okay, let's first loop. Now let's add the hi-hat. Sometimes when you do that, okay, let's do it like that. A shaker. Okay. Not recording when I wanted to. Let's see what that looks like. Let's quantization swing. Make that straight. Okay, let's change that instrument. Meh. Okay, let's put a bass on that. Let's put a okay, let's put a bass line on it. That's not so great. Let's try a different instrument. Okay, let's go back into this. Okay. By the way, I don't really like the sound of that very much. I might come back and fix that, but let's persevere here. Let's record in. It's going on 3 bars, not 4. Okay, let's try that again. Let's do this one more time. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, delete, record again, record into cell 4. Let's get back into the live. You know what, I did that wrong. Let's go back and do that again. Okay. Okay, let's check this out. No, it's not good. Okay, let's fix that. No. Boom, boom. Should I add a drum? Should I add some keyboards? Put another layer on it. So let's put this back. That's a bit rough. But anyway, I can build up a track like that. It's a lot of fun. Remember to like if you liked. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Stay at home. Watch this. Watch the interview with Radri. Check out I'll be posting probably more tracks. I'm having fun learning how to do this at the moment. Yes. Mata Gaijinka. Oh, good to see that you're here. And see that the camera and mic Yoko Simon has in the background there. yeah, I've got this plugged into the computer at the moment. I hope that made sense. I'll have a look at. I'll get better at making these as well. But that was a bit of fun. Anyway, the red value also awesome to see you. Believe in yourself. Well, that's kind of the idea. It is intended to be a hypnotic beat. So that is all good. Wow, thank you, Michael Schumacher. That's awesome. And everybody have an excellent week. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. I don't really do very much on Facebook, so I recommend following me on Twitter if you want to keep up with stuff during the week. And Quentin Rankid, yes, you can make me a request anytime. Notify me earlier. Go ahead. Sergeant Bilko, thank you. It's been a good week. I'm glad I got a bit of a jam in this week. I've been to get through things faster. But yes, take care and see you all later. Quentin Rankid, I suggest best way to get me is direct message me on Twitter, if that's okay. That's it's fairly easy to do. If not, leave a message under the video after the video, and I'll get the notification about it. So, boom. See you later. Peace. Nice play icon there, the red value. See you later. End stream.